Hey my good friends, Sam Haymart for Test Driven TV. Today we're test driving the 2019 Ford Edge ST, the high performance version of Ford's midsize crossover. Very popular middle of the road vehicle for Ford, and now with the new name for their high performance version and more horsepower, it's time to take a drive. All right, my friends, let's get to brass tacks. For 2019, Ford's Edge got a styling refresh and a couple other little things to make it fresh. First thing is with the ST, a new name. It used to be the Ford Edge Sport, now it's the ST. Ford's performance division really needed something to hang the ST badge on since all of the cars are going away that once carried it. The Ford Focus, the Ford Fiesta, ST, no more. So if we wanted to keep ST alive, we had to put it on something. So here it is on the Edge. As we look at the front of this vehicle, we've got a blacked out grille. That new trapezoidal shape is part of the 2019 design. I like it. This has LED fog lights, LED daytime running lights. Optional on this one, 21-inch wheels, black gloss with big brakes, 13.6-inch rotors, and red calipers. Very sexy. I will point out though, these are summer tires, which means if you live in winter states and you want the all-wheel drive high-performance cruiser, not the best choice, I don't think. They do have smaller tires, 20-inch wheels. Those tires, still not exactly snow tires, but not quite as aggressive as these are for not really having traction when it's wet. From this angle, the Ford Edge ST actually has a very nice, tidy appearance in my opinion. This is a vehicle that says sporty, but it also has enough of an understated style that a professional with a six-figure job in a big place where he cares about what everybody thinks could park it in the parking garage without worrying about being a little too crazy. But to the visuals here, we've got body color cladding, and that really does have a cleaner look, I think, than the black plastic that you're going to find on some of the other models. The big difference really is that rear fascia back here with its dual exhaust. Those are genuine exhaust tips, and I point that out because there are some brands out there, even Audi, putting fake exhaust tips on their vehicles. Not the real deal. These actually have air blowing through them, and if you actually put your hands on them, you'd probably get burnt. In the middle, a trailer hitch receiver. Not something I expect to find on a high-performance vehicle, but you can tow with this. LED taillights back here, and that liftgate does have a power opener. At the top of it, a very nicely done spoiler, I think. It's very tasteful, very integrated looking, and as I step back here, I'll just say one more time, I think this is a nice, clean look. The Ford Edge has aged very well, and with this update, I think it's good to go for a couple more years. The interior of the ST is bolstered literally with quite a few changes over most of the other Edge models. The big thing you'll notice right away when getting into it are these sport seats, heavily bolstered, pardon the pun. And they're actually a nice combination of leather and suede, and thus they tend to be very grippy when they're holding on to you. And the side bolsters are actually pretty aggressive, more aggressive than I might have expected for an SUV, almost such that if you were much bigger than I am, say I'm about 170, if you were upwards around 200 or better in terms of your weight, you might find them a little bit tight and uncomfortable. It is a little bit disarming at first to get behind the wheel of a crossover SUV and to actually have seats like this. Also part of the trim here is an ST leather steering wheel with a logo. Very attractive. And over on the dash you're going to find sort of a carbon fiber finish in the trims that you see there. It's generally an upper grade trim level. You've got a lot of nice stitching, accent stitching, pretty much everywhere you look. I have over my head a beautiful panoramic glass roof that really lets the light in. I like these things when they work. Here it works, not very much road noise. The center console, we're missing something here. That would be the shift lever. Ford has gone to a rotary dial in almost all their cars, and they say it's generally to provide more room for the cup holders. I tend to disagree. There's plenty of room for a shift lever here, and that genuinely tends to be my preference over these dials. The one thing I really notice in here above all things, compared to the previous Edge that I tested, is that the fit and finish seems to be a little bit better. I mean, there's still some of the Ford material gaps that I tend to expect, where as I look around this dash and around the headliner, the doors, it looks like there's still 100 different companies making 100 different parts, and they all have their own finish, their own sheen, their own color shade, but they're put together a little bit better than I've noticed in previous versions of this car. So they've been tightening up a little bit where they can, at least on the end of the assembly fit and finish. Here in the center is the Sync 3 audio and infotainment system, fully featured now. Sync 3 has always been very good, so if you find that in a Ford product, it tends to be very good as far as ease of use and the feature content. Audio comes from B&O Play. Sony's now gone by the wayside for Ford, and it's a very good sound system. I found it to be of a high quality, and you got the logo right there on the speaker, always a good thing. The rear compartment of the Edge offers plenty of space back here for most adults. As you can see, my knee room is very good. The height of the seat is good too. I don't feel like I'm sitting down in a hole. I've got a good height, and my knee position is what I would call normal. Plenty of space to stretch out here. The one thing I would point out is that these seats are a little bit on the flat side. It definitely is a bench. I've got a fold down armrest here in the center. There is seating for comfortably 3 people all the way across. Because I am on an upper level unit, I've got heated seats back here, and I might have forgot to mention up front, but there are plenty of power ports all throughout the interior. There's 2 12-volt ports back here. I've got lots of USB ports, 12-volt ports up there. So if you have a lot of devices, if you've got a lot of kids, you'll have no shortage of power. Like up front, this panoramic roof offers a lot of spaciousness back here in terms of the aura. So it's a comfortable place to be, I think. Now, as you'd expect, these seats do fold down in a 60-40 split to an almost flat load floor. They don't fold and tumble, so it isn't entirely flat, but you do get a pretty nice cargo space back there nonetheless. The one thing I'd point out is here on the ST, when you get these larger tires and wheels and the larger brakes, you lose the spare under the floor. In this one, we have the emergency inflator kit. So something to keep in mind if you want to really use this thing like an off-road SUV or something like that. This is probably not your model. You want to get one of the regular Edges that's a little bit more dialed in for going off-road and things like that. Well, that's the interior. I think it's time to go for a drive. All right, my friends, finally for the drive. Now, under the hood of this thing is something pretty special, actually, in my opinion. It's been a nice engine in other vehicles I've driven, and that is Ford's 2.7-liter twin-turbocharged EcoBoost V6. 335 horsepower in this trim, 380 pound-feet of torque, and that's going to all 4 wheels via an 8-speed automatic transmission. Now, this 8-speed, all controlled through a rotary shift dial. Hate it, not my favorite, especially in a vehicle that's supposed to be high performance. It's just not intuitive at all. I'm a man, I like to have a lever in my hands. It's pretty simple. But at the same time, if you're parking and maneuvering around and trying to work in traffic, I don't like these knobs at all. But that said, it does have a sport mode here, which I'll put it in for the sake of our acceleration here. Now, I'm gonna come over here, come to a stop, because the big question I always ask, past all the specs, is how does it go? Woo! Oh, torque steer, a little bit of torque steer. Yes, a lot of torque steer. Woo! And 80 plus. Okay, that's enough. All right, let me get that. Brakes, brakes, brakes. I get a curve coming up. All right, so it does have good power. It's got very good refinement, I think. This engine is one that I like. This transmission does a pretty good job. Paddle shifters, they're still toys. I have yet to find a car with paddle shifters that really does it, so I don't play with them usually. When it comes to power, is it fast? Is it fun? Problem is, this is a big, heavy SUV. It's a crossover. This thing's pushing a lot of freaking brake through the wind. So is it fast? Ford says 5.9, 0 to 60. It feels like 6.5, 7, honestly, in sport mode with the air conditioning off. Fuel economy, 19 mpg city, 26 highway, 21 combined is what the EPA says. I got 20 in my week with it before I came out here and started getting all crazy here in the back roads. So powertrain's actually pretty impressive. It's just here, it's pushing a lot of weight. And that's really my takeaway. The other thing, torque steer, and that's because we've got front wheel drive with a power takeoff for the all-wheel drive component. It's biased to the front. And so, cattle guard, when you are accelerating, most of that power is going to the front wheels if you're on dry pavement, and so you get torque steer. Now I'm going to turn around and we're going to talk about handling. I just have a little test strip here that I drive back and forth on, so bear with me as we set up for the next conversation. All right, little cattle guard there. All right, so handling. This really sort of get this thing out of sport mode. That thing just holds and holds and holds. That's sport mode really sucks, actually. You know, let's go back to powertrain. It sucks because if you're just doing everyday driving, it sucks. But you know, you have to turn it on and off if you want fun and turn it back to normal. So we're back to normal. We're on drive. Road noise is actually pretty good. This is very insulated, very quiet in here. The suspension is about 10 to 20% stiffer depending on front or rear springs than the regular Edge. So we've got stiffer springs to go with these, stickier tires, these bigger brakes. That's all good because as we are out here on a back road with curves and you start throwing this thing's weight around, you need grip, you need brakes, you need stiff suspension to keep this thing from becoming a big marshmallow on wheels. Whenever you add power to a big top-heavy SUV, it can get kind of scary, you know? So Ford's done a pretty good job of getting this thing to where, hey, there's a cow. Getting this thing to where it's controlled when you're throwing it around with a little bit of speed. And that's a good thing. The bad thing is if you're buying this thing for high intentions of driving fast and being high performance, it's kind of a bummer because if you're out here throwing it into curves and really trying to drive it fast and barnstorm, you are always painfully aware of how heavy this thing is because, you know, it takes work, right? So it's refined, it handles well, it sticks to the ground, it's got all those things, but it's kind of scary at the limit. That's sort of my takeaway here. If you're just on the freeway and driving it normally around town, you're going to find this to be just as comfortable as any crossover is. The dynamics are probably as refined as they're going to get, but it really does have more body roll than a car would. And cattle guard, that's just the bottom line here, you know? Just like the performance in terms of acceleration, you've got a compromise here of two worlds. You've got a big roomy SUV and you've got the want for high performance. You get a little bit of both, but you know, there's just a trade-off, that's all. So God, I hate to keep coming back to overall it's really good, but there you go. All right, my friends, now it's time to wrap this up and tell you what I think as far as the overall takeaways are concerned. First thing, let's talk about price. $53,000 for this vehicle as equipped. That's pretty up there for a midsize crossover from an American brand in my opinion. Now, is it overly priced? I wouldn't say so, but at $53,000 you can get a comparably equipped Chevy Blazer. That's all new. I haven't tested it yet, so I have no idea really how it compares. Chevy Blazer with the V6 is down about 30 ponies, but you can equip it very similarly with the same sporting type of intentions. $53,000, so for another few $1,000s you can get into a Mercedes-Benz AMG GLC 43 or an X3 40i. Might not have said that right, but it is their more high performance version with similar horsepower. Those are in the mid-50s on up. So if you're spending this amount of money, you can start looking at other things. And that really is my thing with price here, is the fact that, you know, you're spending 53 grand, you really want to have this vehicle. You want a Ford Edge ST because there are so many options in that price range that honestly, I don't know, that's just something that you would have to think about. This is certainly a vehicle that has a lot of competition out there in various shapes and sizes. The interior fit and finish and the overall quality very, very good compared to when I first test drove this back in 2015. Vastly improved. The body panel fit and alignment, particularly something I picked apart hugely on the 2015 model, very much improved here. And that's across the board. That wasn't just my test vehicle back in 2015. I looked at a lot of Edges. They all had the same problems. This has been fixed. They've actually addressed a lot of those things. No rattles in the interior. So they brought the quality up, which I'm very impressed with. And the last thing, performance. You know, we're back to that performance question. Ford isn't doing cars anymore except for the Mustang, and darn it, you know. So when I think of high performance, I don't normally think of SUVs, honestly. And so if, you know, you want a high performance something from Ford, unless you're getting a Mustang, this is going to be it for now on. So problem is with an SUV or a crossover, you're in a much heavier, taller vehicle, and that just takes away from the whole concept of performance. So I would say that in the performance here, you've got a good package for a crossover SUV. 0 to 60 Ford claims 5.9. Feels about like that on a good day in sport mode. Honestly, it feels more like about 7.5 around town. If you're not in sport mode, it can be pretty sluggish sometimes if you're just trying to really get on it. You've got to dial it into sport mode and really want to go fast to get it to do it. Handling, same thing. Even with these big tires and wheels and great brakes, this is a heavy vehicle, and that really does sort of make this a compromise no matter what you do. So performance is there for a crossover, but is it high performance? I have a hard time calling it that. I hate to say that. So those are my 3 key takeaways. Now, if you want a far more detailed review on the Ford Edge, I would invite you to click right there. That was our 2015 test drive. You're going to find a lot of detail there that does apply to this, even though this has been improved in some areas. Also, subscribe to my YouTube channel because I test drive cars and we do news, if you like this, that is. And then you can see more. Have a good one.